Welcome to another episode of Men to Men Podcast. I'm Malik Carey along with my co-host Brett Cowell. Brett, what's going on, man?
Malik, how you doing, my brother? How are you?
I'm good, man. Just surviving without these sports right now. How you doing? What's going on?
I'm struggling. You know I'm struggling.
Did you see the draft at least?
Yeah, I mean, that's how bad it is, man. I'm sitting there watching the NBA draft. I don't know any of these dudes. I've never heard of them. I just now learned that half of them play in leagues that I never heard
of before.
I consider myself a real sports fan, but
we're in trouble. And he's so young now, man.
These kids are 18 in 3 months and 18 in 6 weeks, and it's like I told you before. It's hard to build a team through the NBA draft unless you're willing to sit on it for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And you know what these owners are doing. After 2 years of trying to build up a team, only win 20-something games, and they fire the general manager, they fire the coach, and they start the whole thing all over again.
Yeah, repeat. Wait. Chris Paul's going to the Golden State Warriors.
Well, look, everybody's talked about that. My thing is it's going to be very interesting for me to see how he functions with that backup unit. The Warriors play a fast-paced game.
Yeah, he's old, man.
And the key to their success is their system, in my opinion. Their system is constant movement, constant motion.
And he can't keep a hamstring.
and Chris Paul is like, yo, slow it down, dog. Slow it down. Right. So I'm not sure that's going to work out, to be honest with you.
I'm not either. But what's going on, man? What are we talking about?
Look, man, today I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, emotional intelligence. And we all know that some of us know that emotional intelligence is it's a real critical set of interpersonal skills that pretty much indicate how you are, and it ultimately determines who you are. And so it doesn't matter how smart you are, how wealthy you are. It doesn't matter what background you have, what culture you come from, what religion you are, history, status. None of that matters.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, emotional intelligence drives your successes or your failures, and it can differentiate you from other people.
And you know what, man? I know it's such a new topic, but you're right. I mean, I know a lot of men our ages, I'll keep it like that, who don't have emotional intelligence. And when we look at emotional intelligence, also known as emotional quotient, EQ, it refers to the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions as well as the emotions of others. And that's important, because it's not just about managing my own emotions, it's about managing those, having empathy. It helps to maintain healthy relationships and effectively cope with life challenges. And so when we look at emotional intelligence, it's really important. And it also involves being aware of one's own emotions, expressing them appropriately, and being empathetic towards others.
So what did we just get finished talking about 2 or 3 weeks ago? We did a whole month of mental illness.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're not calling emotional intelligence part of mental illness, but so many people are not aware of what emotional intelligence really is. And if you don't know what it is, how are you going to be good at having it?
Yeah,
implementing it and executing it.
And again, and we look at our community, man, and I'm really focusing on our community. We have not been taught to be aware. We've been in fight or flight mode for so long. It's been crazy. And so there's some key components to emotional intelligence.
Yeah, basically there's 5 key components to emotional intelligence. I'm glad you brought that up. The first one is self-awareness. The second one is self-regulation. The third one is empathy. The fourth one is motivation, and the fifth one is social skills. Talk a little bit, Malik, about the self-awareness piece.
Yeah, self-awareness is very key. And when we look at self-awareness, it's the ability to recognize and understand one's own emotions, strengths, weaknesses, values, and motivations. Self-awareness gives a clear understanding of how our emotions impact our thoughts and behavior. And when we look at self-awareness, it's really important to understand, and I'm talking about for men, we've been shut down emotionally, a lot of us, from birth, right? We've talked about this. Men are not supposed to cry. Men are, you scrape your knee, get up, go feel, pick it up, And so when it comes to being able to be self-aware about our own emotions and understanding, how do we do that when we've been taught not to feel?
Well, you know what? First of all, that's a great point. And you're right. We haven't been taught to do that. But the thing here about self-awareness with respect to emotional intelligence, the key thing here is we lack the ability, and I'm just going to say it, we lack the ability to recognize and understand our own emotions. That's number one. Number two, we lack the ability to recognize and understand our own strengths and weaknesses. And you want to know why that's important? Because if you don't get how you feel, and you don't understand it, and you don't get what you're good at and what you're weak at, you're operating at a deficit, and you're operating at a deficiency every single day of your life.
And I don't know how to communicate, and I don't know how to say, hey, listen, I'm hurt. Hey, I'm upset. I'm angry. I don't know how to say I'm vulnerable. I never understand those things. So what I do is I keep going into fight or flight mode.
Right.
You know, I keep going into, I really feel something, but I'm angry. So I go right to anger.
And we don't understand why we're angry. We don't understand why we're sad. We don't understand why we're discouraged or discombobulated, because what emotional intelligence tells us, at least from a self-awareness standpoint of view, is that if we're not fully understanding of how our emotions impact our thoughts and our behaviors, then in essence, we're out of control, without control over our thoughts and behaviors. And that's why the society is all jacked up, man.
Right,
because,
right, exactly. And I'm going to say this. I think women do a better job at it. You know,
We agree.
You know, and so what they're asking us as men is, tell me how you feel. Tell me how, you know, talk to me, communicate with me, and be intimate with me. But we don't know how to do that. So we're left fighting, you know, and then, you know, but when we run to the next person or the next chick or the next thing, then we can open up a little bit, but then we shut back down again. And so it's a constant vicious cycle of, I just don't know how to regulate, you know,
Right.
and it's for real. It's real. And, you know, I see it every day. And so, you know, as far as men, we're talking to you, men, about understanding, you know, understand what your feelings are, emotions. And we're not talking about to be running around here or in your feelings, but understand what those things are for you.
And what your emotions are doing to you.
Exactly.
And how it impacts other people. Now, you mentioned something a second ago about self-regulation. And that's important because it's basically your ability to manage and control your own emotions and your impulses, but more importantly, it's how you react in different situations. And let's think about it for a minute. At the end of the day, how we respond and how we react in the situations that we're put in largely dictates our success, our failure, and whether we're able to handle the situations that we're put into.
Yeah, and I think that's important too. How we handle stress, right? Whenever I'm stressful, do I go home and hit the bottle, right? Or do I go take a walk? Do I do something healthy when I'm stressful? Am I cussing out the kids and the wife and you know, taking names and getting off that way? How am I handling my emotions very healthy? And again, and I'm just talking about the Black community right now. I don't know about, and I've seen other, but I'm just dealing with us right now. We as men, and we're talking about men, have not been doing a great job of self-regulation.
Oh, you're 100% right.
And we have to do better. We have to learn to do better, right? When you taught something, you learn something, you do better at it. I mean, again, you know, I'm stressed, I'm going to the bar. I'm stressed, I'm going to get a drink.
Right.
I'm pissed off at my wife, I'm going to get a mistress, right? Those are not healthy ways to cope with
I get
life.
into an argument with somebody, so I pull out a knife. I get into an argument with somebody, so I pull out a gun and shoot somebody.
Right.
Not to be insensitive, but the whole concept around self-regulation is coming to the realization that in the moment, and the key here is in the moment, can I take a step back and think the right thing, do the right thing, so that the situation that I'm in control of it, as opposed to the situation being in control of me.
And I love what it talks about here when you talked about the ability to adapt to changing situations. You know, a lot of people don't do well with change.
Exactly.
Right? We're a creature of habit, but how do I handle those changes? How do I handle when life deals me a blow, how do I handle that without flying off the rafter, without going to the next level? How do I handle being able to deal with the changes that come with life?
Well, emotional intelligence is your ability to self-regulate yourself in those particular situations. So that's the answer to those questions. How do I do this in this if this happens? How do I do that if that happens? If you possess emotional intelligence, then you have the ability to self-regulate yourself in those moments of indecision, anger, bitterness, rage, whatever.
Yeah.
So
that's so good.
So here's the other thing, Malik. And you and I argue about. We don't argue that much, but we argue about this.
We argue a lot, Brad.
We argue about this from time to time. One of the most important characteristics I think anybody can have. I mean, if you're a decent person, if you have character, if you have integrity, if you care about other people, if you're not self-centered and self-absorbed. One of the most important characteristics that one can have is empathy.
Oh, yeah.
And emotional intelligence is largely built upon one's empathy.
Yeah, and I want to talk about empathy, and I love the difference between empathy and sympathy. I'm not a real sympathetic person, and I'll be honest, and I heard this described one time, and I love the difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is if I fall in a hole, if my brother falls in a hole, am I going to get in that hole with him? Or am I going to throw him a rope? Empathy is I'm going to throw him a rope and pull him out of that hole. And so, I know sometimes we get this thing mixed up between sympathy and empathy. Someone passes away, yeah, I'm going to send a sympathy card. I'm sympathetic, and, but I will show empathy, and empathy is the ability to understand the ability to understand and share the emotions and experiences of others. Being empathetic means that, you can put yourself in someone else's shoes and show compassion, respond appropriately to the emotions of others.
And that's the biggest difference between empathy and sympathy. And more importantly than comparing those two things, which is important, you can't have emotional intelligence without being empathetic. Because at the end of the day, what empathy is really, really all about is being able to put yourself in, is being compassionate. First of all, it's understanding where somebody else is, and then being compassionate enough to put yourself in their shoes. And then the big thing, and we're both believers, and when the Bible tells us this, Jesus tells us this, and then walk with that person. Mm-hmm. Empathy is walking with that person where that person is when that person needs you most.
Yep.
As opposed to sympathy, which is simply feeling bad.
Right. I feel bad for you.
I feel bad for you, bro.
Yeah,
you know
but I ain't going to walk with you.
I feel bad for you. I ain't going to buy you a sandwich.
Right.
I ain't going to buy you no sandwich, but I feel bad that you're hungry.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing about, I'm getting in that hole with you. No, we going to throw you a rope. We going to pull you out of that hole. We going to walk with you, and we going to go. And so I think that that's really good. And, and understanding, being empathetic is really about showing compassion. And again, we ain't been taught. I know where I come from. Compassion?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's compassion?
And it's responding appropriately to the situation you're in. Mm-hmm. You feel bad. You just got rejected. You just got hurt. You're down. You're out. You're feeling bad. I come to you. I sit with you. I speak with you. I console you, comfort you to some extent. And I try to understand where you're at. Mm-hmm. And I try to help you get through this. And that's what appropriately responding to the situation is. Now you can have another situation where somebody's just bugging out and somebody's going ballistic, somebody's going crazy. Well, you ain't going to sit down and sing Kumbaya with that person. Emotional intelligence in that particular situation tells you to protect yourself
and get away
and make sure you ain't going to get jacked up.
Right.
Because this other person that you're with, that you care about, is just bugging, snapping. So it's all about responding appropriately to the situation. So we're talking about the components for emotional intelligence. Self-awareness is one. Self-recognition is two. We just spoke about empathy. And the fourth one is motivation, which is something that I never thought about before. But the key to motivation is being able to drive yourself to achieving goals, regardless of the challenges, regardless of everything going against you, regardless of how you feel, regardless of all the different circumstances that are around you. It's your ability to persevere through all of that to achieve the goals that you set for yourself. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, from what I'm learning, emotional intelligence from a motivational standpoint of view is really about those people who have a sense of purpose. And we talk about this all the time, a sense of passion and resilience. So when we talk about emotional intelligence from a motivation standpoint of view, it's about your purpose, it's about your passion, and about your resilience. People who are defined or identified as having emotional intelligence are people who are motivated by purpose, passion, and resilience. And I love that. I love it because at the end of the day, I don't care who you are. I don't care what you do. You're going to face challenges. You're going to face obstacles. You're going to face haters. You're going to face people who don't want to see you succeed. And you're going to face real challenges that are really hard to overcome. And if you are emotionally intelligent enough and motivated enough, you'll persevere through all those things because of your purpose, your passion, and your resilience.
Oh yeah, and as far as motivation is concerned, those are the times when things do get tough, right? That I'm motivated enough to pull myself up. That I'm motivated enough. Hey, I'm not going to sit in this. Yeah, I've experienced some losses. I've done. So I'm motivated enough to say, you know what, I'm in here. And I love that word resilience. Because resilience is so important. Because so many people give up. And I think that's what we're dealing with too. Also, is a generation of men who've just flat out quit.
And it's not just men; it could be anybody. But I like the fact that you're talking about men, and probably it's probably more specifically black men.
Black men.
I like that.
We talking about men to men, baby, men to men.
I forgot where I was.
You forget where you are, right?
I forgot where I was.
You're in the cave, baby. You're in the cave.
Okay.
But yeah, so when we talk about that, man, understanding, and again, when we look at these things, we really understand that life is going to hit us, right? Life is going to hit us, and it continues to hit us, and life been hitting us for 400 years since we've been here. Right. But again, when I get that motivation to not look back on all of the things that have happened and to say, you know what, I got to push forward. I don't care what this feels like. I got to get my butt out of this bed. I got to get out of this situation. I have the passion and the resilience to keep going no matter what happens. Those are the things that we deal with. And so understanding that, really is in key. And social skills, the adaptness at building and managing relationships, communicating effectively, and resolving conflicts. Again, how am I resolving conflict? Am I, flying off at the handle all of the time? When we look at our divorce rate as far as us as a people, why we, again, lowest out of everything, because we don't have the social skills to be able to resolve conflict. Individuals with strong social skills can collaborate, influence others, and work well as a team. And so, we got to think about that. In developing social skills, it means sometimes enhancing communication skills, focusing on effective communication, paying attention. All of these things are important. So when we look at that, we got to understand that being not just I can hang out with my fellas, right? But can I get along with my wife? Can I get along with my children?
When you look at the components of emotional intelligence, this fifth one here, which is social skills that Malik is talking about, it speaks to the thing, in my opinion, that separates us. Because this social skills component of emotional intelligence speaks to leadership ability. Like Malik said, it speaks to the ability to, on one hand, establish strong relationships and then manage them. It speaks to the ability to be able to collaborate with other people. And it speaks to the ability to be able to influence other people and work well with teams. At the end of the day,
and that team could be at work, that team could be at home, that team could be whatever your team is, right? And understanding that also.
That team is everywhere, every phase of your life. Personal, private, professional. So the ability to have these social skills is critically important to your ability to be an effective person in life. I don't know I've heard it over and over and over again that it's very, very hard to be happy and successful in this world all by yourself.
No, man. I don't know nobody who's done that.
Exactly. And for those few who have,
Hats off to them.
but not only that, I've heard shame on you, because if you're an individual and you're successful, you're here to, in essence, share that with other people and to bring along other people and to lift up other people, to influence, encourage, motivate other people. And to be able to do that, you got to have the fifth component of the emotional intelligence model, which is these social skills that need to be developed.
And I want to talk about that when we talk about it, again, collaborate and cooperate. And these are some things that how you developing social skills. I got to be able to collaborate. I got to be able to cooperate, engage in the team activities, group participation, hanging out with my family. Compromise is so important.
Right.
Resolving conflict constructively. Practice conflict resolution skills by seeking to win-win situations. It's not always about me meeting my needs. Anybody's been married over, hey, I celebrated another anniversary this week too. Yeah, man.
Really?
Yeah.
You just did?
Yeah.
Well, let's have a moment of silence for your wife. Let's take time.
Yeah, so when
Let's
we
take
talk
time
about
to
that,
set up our prayers.
right, it's not always about me.
Right.
And that's one of the things about, conflict resolution is, and I'm going to stay it from it, is because I want to win. I want to win. I want my family to win. I want my team to win. I want to be able to put us all in a win-win situation where we all win, not because I see this a lot in marriage counseling. I want to talk about this in this whole, social skills component is we're always trying to get our point across and not hear the other person's point because I feel what I want is right or what I know is right, instead of saying, hey, listen, you know what? We're both right. You know what? I hear your side. That's social skills.
Exactly. The old concept of losing the battle to win the war.
Right.
And the whole key to this social skills component is, in my humble opinion, is being able to develop, build, and manage relationships, because we have relationships with our wives, our children. Our parents,
community,
our
church,
siblings, church, family, business, jobs, everywhere you go. When you wake up in the morning, you roll out of bed, at some point throughout the course of the day, you were in a relationship with different people.
Building a community somewhere.
And your ability to have strong, effective relationships is driven by your social skill abilities, driven by your emotional intelligence. All right, my brother, look, real quick, let's talk. I'm sorry, did you?
Yeah, no. I was going to ask you. So why is emotional importance so so important, Brett?
Excuse me. A couple things. We just talked about relationships. Without emotional intelligence, you cannot enhance relationships. Without emotional intelligence, you can't make good business decisions or decisions, period. Without emotional intelligence, you cannot be an effective leader. We just got finished talking about. Without emotional intelligence, you can't be good at conflict resolution, something Malik just talked about. And without most emotional intelligence, you don't have the ability to have what they consider to be personal well-being. And personal well-being is pretty much just being emotionally intelligent enough to have that self-awareness that we talked about, to have that emotional resilience we talked about, so that you can be an overall well-being individual. And this speaks to your ability to manage stress, your ability to handle setbacks, and to maintain positive mental health. And so, Malik, we talked about enhanced relationships.
Yeah, again, it enables us to build strong relationships and strong, meaningful relationships. Not just this surface, we go to the ball game. I mean, you and I, we've been walking together a long time.
Right.
We know each other, right? I mean, and so anybody knows out there, Brett, now we disagree a lot. That's why we decided to do this. We don't always agree with one another, but when we don't, we talk it out. We email it out. We fight it out. But we know at the end of the day, one of the things that I know about this brother sitting across from me is he got my back.
Yep.
Right.
And you got mine.
Right. And so it forces, and we're able to communicate. I don't think we've, you talk about arguing. We never argue. We have had some healthy debates. We've had things that we both agree or disagree on, but we've learned over the years how to communicate with one another.
Right.
You know, and understand, that, what, we're just trying to make one another better,
Yep.
and it leads to these healthy, fulfilling relationships that I could say, this is a brother sitting across from me. There's a brother I trust with my family. It's a brother I trust with my life. And that's what it's about. And it's not always about, hey, I agree with everything. He's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I'm a Cowboy fan.
And nobody's perfect, man. Nobody's perfect.
If you can't get no more.
Well, the biggest thing here, again, not to beat this dead horse, but enhancing emotional intelligence, part of it is really all about having healthy relationships. If you don't have the ability to develop and maintain healthy relationships, you're in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then we talk about improved decision making. Another one of the benefits, another one of the value points of having emotional intelligence, just being able to make better business decisions, personal decisions, all kinds of decisions that affect your life one way or the other. And we all know that all of our lives are driven by our personal lives, our job lives, our careers, our businesses, neighbors. We make decisions every day, all day about small things, big things, critical things. And having emotional intelligence simply gives you the ability to be able to make rational, balanced decisions that take into consideration logical reasoning as well as emotional thinking in order to make the best possible decision that you can make in that given situation.
Right, and I think that helps out. We talk about this common sense, right? Common sense ain't common. When I'm making decisions, I'm learning how to do something you just talked about is, using just when I'm making a decision, am I making a decision that's best for everyone involved? Am I making a decision that's going to, and when we talk about logic, that's a tricky one there, and that goes back to when we talk about the whole, common sense ain't common because logic ain't logic for everybody,
Exactly.
And so when we look at those things, am I making decisions that are going to benefit, put me in again, when we go back to win-win, put my family in a win-win, or am I making decisions based on I, me, self? And whenever I'm always thinking about self, I'm in a dangerous position. And so again, it improves the decision making by being aware and managing my emotions, and so we have to really understand that, and it helps with effective leadership. When we talk about emotional intelligence, it's crucial. And if I'm a leader, I have to have a high level of EQ to understand what motivates my team members, resolve conflict, and create positive work environments. And again, not just work environments, home environments. Wherever I go, there I go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So wherever I go, there go I. If I'm causing conflict at work, most likely I'm going to cause conflict at home. If I cause conflict at home, that means I'm going to cause conflict in church or wherever I'm at. And so understanding as a leader, how am I leading my family? And again, everybody's not meant to be a leader. If you're married and you have a family, you are meant to be a leader.
Well, I was going to say the whole concept of the leadership piece in emotional intelligence isn't about you being a president or a CEO or a director or a manager. It's all about you being a leader or having leadership ability,
and wherever you are,
so that
your
you
sphere of influence.
so that you can better manage yourself and better manage relationships and better manage the particular situations that you find yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about leadership when it comes to emotional intelligence, we're not talking about the CEO of Pepsi Cola.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're talking about you being the CEO
of your home,
of your
and
life.
It starts there first.
Of your life.
Right.
Effective leadership is about you being the CEO of yourself. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about. And it spills over to being able to resolve conflicts, like Malik talked about earlier, being able to look at your side, this position, that side, her side, his side, whatever, and saying, you know what, we're going to compromise, we're going to make sacrifices, and we're going to make a decision that's good for the group. We're going to resolve this conflict, this conflict in a way that is equitable for everybody. That doesn't mean everybody's going to be 100% happy. It probably means everybody's going to be 50% happy and 50% upset, because when you resolve a conflict, everybody doesn't get what they want, but there's a rational, reasonable solution that meets everybody's needs.
Yeah, and understanding, you know what, when I'm dealing with conflict, again, how do I deal with conflict? You know, am I flying off the handle? Am I going back to what we talked about? Am I being self-aware of what I'm feeling right now and what's going on with this conflict, so that I can handle it in a healthy and manageable way? Do I yell every time that there's something going on? Do I scream? Do I curse? Do I go curse everybody out? You know, and these are things that we have to really understand, to understand what this conflict, what emotional intelligence is when it comes to being able to handle conflict, diffuse situations. You know, am I a part of the problem, or am I part of the solution? You know, and understanding that I want to be part of the solution, right? And so everything that I do when there's conflict, it's about leading to better outcomes.
Exactly.
You know, I want the best outcome, and that doesn't mean that it's going to always be pretty. You know, my wife and I, we call it intense fellowship. We don't call it arguing, right? Yeah, you're going to have those days. But again, when I'm in conflict, who do I want to be right, or do I want to be right? Do I want to be happy, or do I want to be right? It always goes back down to that for me, right? In my team at work, do I want to be happy, or do I want my team to be happy, or do I want to be right? You know, do I want my team to be productive and thrive? Or do I want to walk around with my ego puffed up because I want to be right? And those are things that we have to deal with when we're dealing with conflict, you know, because we're not always skilled. And we see it again, like you said, Brett, earlier. Do I take a gun and shoot you, or because I didn't like what you said? Do I fly off at the handle and, you know, put my hands on my children every time I don't like something they've done? You know, all of those things are important. And again, we ain't doing a good job of it, bro.
And at the end of the day, bro, as we close this thing out, the bottom line is emotional intelligence, in essence, allows us to develop a greater sense of self-awareness, a greater sense of self-regulation. It allows us to develop the empathy that we need, the motivation that we need, and the social skills that we need, so that we can be a better all-around person, so that we can be more effective and more influential on other people in a positive way. At the bottom line, at the end of the day, that's what emotional intelligence is. It's a valuable skill that develops over time, and as you understand what it is and be aware of what it is, you practice it, you work on it, and you get better and better and better at emotional intelligence. My argument is, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people, you need to start teaching emotional intelligence early on, so that young people learn how.
The younger, the better.
They learn these skills, so they grow up, and they improve these skills as they go along. And if you get these skills at a younger ages, you have less dropouts, you have less fights in school, you have less of our children falling out of the mainstream, if you will, and
learning how to regulate their emotions,
so that they can be more a part of mainstream.
Right. And this is what this is about: emotional intelligence and regulating your emotions. And when we look at that, again, I love what you just said. It is something that develops over time. You know, developing emotional intelligence contributes to greater self-awareness, emotional resilience, and emotional well-being. And not just my well-being, but the well-being for all around me.
Exactly.
You know, and so when we look at that, and I just want to really just give some tips for this too, real fast. You know, reflect on your own emotions. You know, journal, seek feedback from your peers. You know, doing those things. Identify what triggers you. You know, these are things that we would, and I know this trigger word is something that's new. It's only been around for the last 10 years, but we all have those triggers, you know. I always look at this word, I love it, halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Right? If I'm hungry, if I'm hungry, me and my wife we got word hangry. If I'm hungry and angry, I'm good, you know. But if I'm if I'm tired, is that a great time to have a conversation with me? Knowing those things, you know. And so, you know, journaling with your feelings, identifying, looking at mindfulness techniques, and you know, meditation, not just clearing my mind, but getting something, a book out, getting quiet, being still, you know, practicing listening to one another. You know, we've not been taught to do a great job at listening, Brett. You know,
what you say?
We haven't been. Yeah, exactly.
Say what?
Right, and not just listening to respond, because a lot of times what happens is I'm listening, and while I'm listening to you, I already got my response in my head of what I want to say. Sometimes I don't even know what you're going to say, but because you come to me and you say, "Hey, I need to talk to you." Oh God, what is it? Right. So understanding that, enhancing communication skills, you know, engaging in exercises, reading more. You know, how do I do those things? So, I love this one to really seek feedback from how am I doing.
Well, you know, that's a great point. Now, a lot of people won't ask that question because they don't want the answer. And one of the things that prevents people from developing emotional intelligence skills, and stay with me for a second, is that they don't want to be challenged when it comes to their self-awareness, because that requires looking in the mirror and saying, I need to be better at this, or I need to be better at that, or I don't do this well, or I don't do that well. That affects people's self-confidence. That affects people's self-esteem. People don't like checking themselves, and they don't like being checked. And so part of emotional intelligence is your willingness to be self-aware so that you can improve in the areas that you need to improve in.
You know, do me a favor, Brett. Address some of the importance, especially for young men, and having positive role models who can teach. Maybe they don't have a father at home. Maybe they don't have someone like that. Discuss how I know you and I, we met through coaching, right? We met through being in the community and doing those things. But how do we get out, and you said it, dealing with it, how do we get out into communities and really start to, and I think I'm answering my own question, but, you know, talk to that a little bit, man. It's really teaching some of these young boys.
Well, at the end of the day, the bottom line is this: we just had a podcast that we're having right now, and so you take this emotional intelligence conversation and you have it with a small group of young men, a small group of older men. You can have this conversation with anybody you want to have it with. You can have it in a small group, and in this small group, talk about why do you believe you're challenged in the area of self-awareness? Why do you believe you're challenged in the area of empathy? Why do you think you're not motivated? Why do you think you're not as good socially with your social skills as you might want to be? The only way people get better at something is to have conversations around it, identify what it is, but more importantly, spend more time on resolving things and fixing things and getting better at it, as opposed to just identifying the fact that we have the problem. And so to answer your question, really simple, have this conversation with people in your inner circle to help each other develop emotional intelligence.
And then how do we overcome some of the cultural and societal barriers that we as men face? Because that's important also, because again, if I'm coming in and I'm just going into a bunch of brothers, hey man, you know what, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence today, you know, and they're like, well, yo, what are you talking about? Because how do we, because that's important really when we talk about where we are as a society, where we are as a culture.
I'm going to answer the question by first saying this. You can't talk to a fish about flying, and you can't talk to a bird about swimming. You can't have an emotional intelligence conversation with somebody who's mentally disabled. You can't have an emotional intelligence conversation about somebody who's broken. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, again, emotional intelligence is about being appropriate, about doing the right thing in the moment. So if you're talking about people, and you make a great point, Malik, because you can I shouldn't say this, but all of us, we both know people that you can go to and say, let's have a conversation about emotional intelligence. It's like, say what?
Right, exactly.
Because we're not aware of what this topic means. Most of us aren't. Well, maybe not. A lot of us aren't.
We're not.
So you have to read the room. You have to understand who you're talking to, and do they have the capacity to talk about this, or for that matter, the willingness to talk about this. And let's face it, man, there's a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, there are people who understand what this is. They're like, you know what, I'm not comfortable going there.
Exactly.
And so if you're not comfortable going there, don't go there with them.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
And again, because that's one of the things we're talking about as far, we're talking about the traditional notion of masculinity, man, we tough. We ain't talking about our emotions. We've been so conditioned in our, the social pressures of life that, man, we just don't even talk about this stuff.
Well,
Right.
look, to that point, and we've talked about this before, you have your inner circle, I have mine. In my inner circle, I can bring this up and I'll get pushback. And then 5 minutes later, 7 minutes later, somebody will say something. 3 minutes later, somebody will say something else. And 10 minutes later, we're having a great discussion around this topic because we've created a safe environment for this person and that person and even me to be vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I struggle with self-awareness. You know what, I struggle with being empathetic. You know what, I struggle with social skills. I struggle with relationships. I struggle with conflict resolution. I struggle with how to deal with people when I'm pissed off. I struggle with this. I struggle with that. But that's the answer to your question.
Yeah.
You sit down with people and you have a conversation.
Yeah, and I think that there's a misconception about emotional intelligence also that I want to talk about, because some people they mistake it as weakness. Right? They mistake it as being feminine. What are you talking about? I'm supposed to talk. No, this is not about that. Right? And there are some misconceptions about my emotions. I always go back to Friday. You playing with my emotions, Smokey?
Right.
Right. But yeah. So there are some misconceptions that we need to be able to deal with, so that when we look at emotional intelligence and explore, it empowers us. We want to deal with this from an empowerment standpoint.
Exactly.
How it empowers men to be more leaders and lead more fulfilling lives. Not just that I'm talking about my feelings in some negative way where I'm feeling soft or vulnerable and all of those things, but I'm empowered so that I take the bull by the horns and I'm able to walk out of here, walk with more power, walk with a wife who loves me, my wife, I could be intimate with this woman. I can be vulnerable with this person and it not be thrown back in my face. And
I'm really glad you brought that up, because as we close this out, the reason for having this conversation in the first place is to make it clear and known that emotional intelligence is empowering. It's not a reflection on anything negative. It's not calling you out. Emotional intelligence and the components that lie within emotional intelligence empowers us to be the absolute best we can be. We talked about how that happens. We're better in our relationships. We make better decisions. We're better leaders. We're better at handling conflicts and resolutions. And we're overall better people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research out here that says that, when you have higher levels of emotional intelligence, you have more satisfaction in both your personal and professional lives.
First of all, and we talked about this before at one of your seminars, and I got to say this real quick. People hire people based on their emotional intelligence.
Exactly.
People decide to partner with people and do business with people based on emotional intelligence. Because nobody's going to hire you, nobody's going to work you, nobody's going to give you money, nobody's going to spend time and equity, sweat equity, I should say, with you if you aren't self-aware, if you don't have empathy, if you don't have social skills, if you don't know how to make good decisions, if you can't operate within a strong relationship or be a strong partner in a strong relationship, and you can't make decisions. People don't want to deal with you.
They don't.
So this conversation is about empowering you.
That's it.
And enabling you to be the very best that you can be.
Yeah, no, man, this is so great. And, again, I want to talk about this. Emotional intelligence is a really valuable skill. It is important, and it's throughout when we just recap this: self-awareness, being able to self-reflect, having empathy, motivation, and social skills, right? And again, when we look at this, by cultivating emotional intelligence, you can enhance every part of your life. And one of the things that we do, remember this too, it's a lifetime journey.
Absolutely.
Right? You may have setbacks. You may do that. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself throughout the process, and celebrate small things.
Absolutely.
Hey, I didn't fly off the handle when this time I could have flew off the handle. I didn't lose control and break the TV when my Cowboys lost another game.
Right. After you've already broken half a dozen of them.
So we want to celebrate the small victories, the small wins, understanding that it is a lifetime journey, and we're all at different parts in the journey. And pick up some books, man. Start reading about it. There are a lot of great articles on it, and go out here and be successful. All these podcasts that we're doing, we want to see our brothers start to win. And
keep winning.
And keep winning. Yeah. And some of us are winning at higher levels. And so keep winning. Again, thank you for another great week. Happy 4th of July weekend. Tomorrow's the 4th. So let's go out here and celebrate. I know we had Juneteenth, but we get another holiday.
Let's celebrate the other Independence Day.
The other Independence Day, right. Yeah, we're going to do that. And you cooking out? You doing anything, man?
Yeah, I'm not crashing. I've been invited to half a dozen different places, so we're gonna carry desserts and beverages and side dishes with us. Keep yourself in the car, keep it on ice, and bounce from one place to the other. Yeah, we're gonna have a great weekend.
Yeah, good, man. Enjoy your weekend.
You do the same, my brother.
Your day, and then you know what, man. Again, thank you for another great episode of really just. Thank you for listening to us.
Yeah, this is the Men to Men podcast. Yes. We can be found on Facebook. We can be found on YouTube. The Men to Men podcast. Facebook, YouTube, iCloud, and we have our
SoundCloud.
Yeah, we have our own Facebook page on the Men to Men podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
God bless, and don't forget to be a blessing to somebody else. That's what we're supposed to be all about.
That's it. Mahalia Jackson said, "If I can help someone."